something.
Yeah.
Well, similarly, I think with protecting children, there are many things that are, for people who are not well informed, could muck things up and make them worse. Again, you should be getting qualified, and I'm not qualified, by the way. So but some things, for example, one of my first reactions was to go wading in with a book on, of my relatives and families, and that was a really bad idea. And it only took me years later on to learn about no contact, wherein once you employ it, everything works. Them too. So you don't get any progress by trying to learn to hug and give narcissist foot massages every day, as if that's going to kind of work for something. There are bad strategies, and there's bad strategies for, I would assume, for protecting children. That's not something I've had a huge experience of, to be honest. But I would have thought some of those things that I've talked about would the guidance helplines, the therapy chat ones, but like I say, trained people. They've got MAs, they've got scientific, forensic, analytical knowledge, and they're trained in it. Not just anyone.
Sure.
Because that tend to go along, so you don't make them explode with rage. Expectations of them that are going to make you confused and frustrated. So there are ways to navigate your way. Once you realize you're in the situation with one, two, three, multiple, two narcissistic parents, or a narcissistic sibling, or whatever it is, or a child that's narcissistic, there are ways to handle that situation. There are ways not to,
Just
wiser than others. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's great. Would mindfulness help? Would the practice of mindfulness help the person that is trying to cope with? Would that empower them to immediate feelings, that intuitive self, what's hurtful and what's acceptable, or acceptable and not acceptable, and hurtful and safe? Would mindfulness be something that would be like a gentle practice that even children could find some kind of empowerment and some sort of self-control that would allow them to feel more strong in themselves, to then move into the next part of, maybe the therapeutic journey, or deal with the moment if they can't get out of the situation immediately?
I don't think you can categorically say it, because mindfulness tends to be done in isolation, whereas two of the therapies that are recommended, one is psychodynamic, because you're then able to talk with someone about your experience and get help with the kind of confusion. You are very disoriented. So just trying to expect mindfulness to just click in on top of all that lot is not necessarily going to happen. There's no guarantee that in mindfulness centers you're not going to find narcissists, because narcissists like it when they have a feeding pool of people. So I visited hundreds and hundreds of meditation centers. I've seen narcissistic dynamics going on in some. Like I say, this is one person in 1,000, but this can actually be quite, an arena that would, in some ways, suit loads of people bowing at you. You don't have to work through employment challenges. You've got quite an easy setup there in some ways. So you might get re-traumatized if you just expect that if I just said, mindfulness, Kate, go for it, and you go off on some retreat and then suddenly find yourself under the power of this sort of a narcissistic meditation teacher. Happens. You got like, or Bikram, this hot yoga guy, he's totally narcissistic, or Osho, or many people that have shown up eventually to either have narcissistic assistants in the case of Osho, I think wasn't it, and or like the Wild Wild West documentary seemed to show that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so mindfulness, maybe, depending. It depends on, you know, how well vetted the person is that you're dealing with, people.
Yeah.
It's no guarantee just because it's called mindfulness with a capital M.
Yeah.
It's all right. The other thing is, which would apply to also to the other things I was going to say. One is as a psychodynamic. So, you know, you could check the therapist. Because if you're wounded, you're going to tend to be magnetized to the wrong kind of people.
Right.
You tend to be magnetized to a narcissist, is what you recognize. And you tend to have, you know, other phenomena like being a people pleaser, especially to them. You want to serve a narcissist because it's what you understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you tend to have other things that feed that, like perfectionism.
Yes.
And depression anyway. So things are going on in there. But psychodynamic, which is psychotherapy, talking about your family patterns and backgrounds, that's concentrating on the past. That's a problem-focused type of meditation, therapy.
Yeah.
Again, if it's a child, I don't know, probably play therapy in combination with that would probably start to get the therapist to understand to the extent of what's going on with them. You know, that if they start, you know, saying things that tend to, they can gauge the extent of the narcissistic traits that are presenting already. Yes. So yeah, that kind of therapy may help if they've had a very narcissistic mother who's been bombarding them with manipulation and so on. You know, you may get them to start to take on board that some changes, you know, that maybe that she's not the perfect person. Maybe she's not at all, you know, and how to deal with that shocking traumatic thought and everything that goes with it, that they've been used and they've been lied to or so on, or that they've been unfairly treated, you know, which is, I think, that kind of getting through that denial is a big part of anyone's healing. How you get there, like I say, play therapy. I think also, psychotherapy is tending to be said to be a good one for people with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. One that on the groups that I've seen, the ones that are specific to children of narcissistic parents, is something called EMDR. That's eye movement. Eye movement. What's it called? I can't remember what the D stands for. Reprogramming, direction reprogramming. But it's something to do with like moving the eyeball in certain directions and also recalling the memories. And I think they use a bit of NLP. It's like hypnotherapy is using a bit. It's where the specific most traumatic memories of being shocked, you know, and being totally confused or hurt by wounding words, you know. So I can't tell you much about it because I don't know that much about it, but I do hear that being flagged up quite a lot on the comments threads when people are saying, you know, what kind of therapy? How do I make a choice? People are chipping in saying, oh yeah, you know, I had that. One thing I did notice that somebody said, and I can't vouch for any of these. I'm just telling you what I found, which was that when you start to get this idea on that daddy is, you know, that type that everyone's talking about. So you're actually, you know, you've got a huge hand grenade in your stomachs of this knowledge. Yeah. Because it's a kind of fact, it's a rubber stamp, you know, daddy's that. I think that's a bit harsh, and it's not always also accurate or true. Sure. For example, there's another condition called OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And these people tend to be workaholics, stingy, perfectionistic, and in some ways they have some shared characteristics with narcissistic personality disorder people. So, but when you read the OCPD, you tend to be a little bit more sympathetic somewhere.
Okay.
You know, so until someone is actually diagnosed and it's accurately been monitored and so on by a professional, I think it's a bit risky to sort of rubber stamp one and say they are one of those, because then you get this mentality of us and them, and you make a kind of object of them and a stereotype of them. And that kind of black and white thinking is not ever going to really help anyone in the process.